The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. Its walls were covered with the flags of 1,000 species. Its floor was made of stone brought from 100 different worlds. Admiral Park Do-hyun walked across that floor with steady steps. He was 73 years old. His hair had turned white long ago. His uniform was simple and clean, without the medals and ribbons that other species loved to wear. He carried a single document in his hands. The council members watched him from their high seats. The Threnari sat at the center as they always did. They were tall beings with blue skin and 3 fingers on each hand. They had ruled the council for 2,000 years. They believed they would rule it forever. High Arbiter Velox looked down at the human with bored eyes. He had more important things to think about. Trade agreements, border disputes, the endless politics of 1,000 species. One human admiral was nothing to him. Park Do-hyun stopped in the center of the hall. He did not bow. Human representatives had stopped bowing 50 years ago, after the council rejected their request for voting rights for the 3rd time. "I am here to deliver formal notice," the admiral said. His voice was calm. Under Article 7 of the Integration Charter, humanity requests peaceful separation from the Galactic Council. The hall went silent for a moment. Then the Threnari began to laugh. Velox waved his hand dismissively. "Is this a joke, human? Your species has been part of the council for 300 years. You cannot simply leave." "Article 7 says we can," Park Do-hyun replied. "Any species may withdraw with 18 months' notice. We are giving that notice now." The admiral placed the document on the speaking platform and turned to leave. "Wait," Velox called out. There was amusement in his voice, not concern. "Why would you want to leave? Where would you even go? Humanity has no homeworld anymore. Earth is gone. You exist only because the council allows you to exist." Park Do-hyun stopped walking. He turned back to face the High Arbiter. "We exist because we choose to exist," he said quietly. "We have found a new home. Several, actually. We have been preparing for this day for a very long time." Then he walked out of the Great Hall, and he did not look back. The council discussed the matter for approximately 15 minutes. Most of that time was spent laughing. The Threnari assured everyone that humans would change their minds. They were a useful species, yes. They worked hard. They solved problems. But they were not important. The galaxy had functioned before humans joined the council. It would function after they left. Ambassador Yoon Ji-won spent those 18 months coordinating the withdrawal. She was 62 years old, a career diplomat who had spent her life trying to earn respect for her people. She had failed. The council never saw humans as equals. They saw them as workers, as soldiers, as tools to be used and discarded. She did not feel angry anymore. She had felt angry when she was young. Now she only felt tired and ready to go home. The withdrawal was organized with the same quiet efficiency that humans brought to everything they did. Engineers documented their work and trained their replacements. Soldiers handed over their posts to council forces. Colonists packed their belongings and boarded transport ships. They took only what belonged to them. The council had given them nothing, so they owed the council nothing. On the final day, Yoon Ji-won stood before the council one last time. The Great Hall was mostly empty. Only a few representatives had bothered to attend. The Threnari did not even send their High Arbiter. They sent a junior official instead. On behalf of humanity, Yoon Ji-won said, "I thank the council for 3 centuries of association. We leave with no demands and no complaints. We take nothing but ourselves and what we built with our own hands. We wish you prosperity and peace." The junior official nodded impatiently. Yes, yes. Is that all? That is all. Yoon-ji-won walked out of the Great Hall. Outside, a transport ship was waiting to take her to humanity's new home. She boarded without ceremony. The ship lifted off and joined a convoy of thousands of other vessels, all heading toward the edge of known space. Back on the Council worlds, life continued as normal. The Thrinari threw a celebration to mark the departure of humanity. They called it Liberation Day. They said the Council was finally free of the humans who had cluttered up their stations and colonies for too long. Some species were less certain. The Karathi, a small and quiet people who had often worked alongside humans, watched the exodus with worried eyes. They remembered how human engineers had fixed problems that Karathi technicians could not solve. They remembered how human doctors had treated diseases that Karathi medicine could not cure. Perhaps we should have been kinder to them, one Karathi elder said. But no one listened to the Karathi. No one ever did. In the months that followed, the empty spaces left by humanity slowly filled with workers from other species. The Council assured everyone that the transition would be smooth. Humans had been helpful, they admitted, but they were not essential. The great stations would continue to function. The hyperspace routes would remain open. The frontier defenses would hold. Everything would be fine. On a small planet at the edge of the galaxy, Admiral Park Do-hyun stood on a hill and watched the sun set over humanity's new capital city. They had named the planet New Bison, after a city on Earth that had been known for its resilience and spirit. His granddaughter, Park Ji-yeon, stood beside him. She was 12 years old, born on a council station, raised in a galaxy that had never wanted her. "Grandfather," she asked, "why did we leave? Didn't we have friends back there?" Park Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. "We had colleagues," he finally said. "We had acquaintances. But friends? No, child. Friends value you. Friends respect you. The Council did neither. Will they miss us?" The old admiral smiled sadly. "They will," he said. "They just don't know it yet." The sun disappeared below the horizon. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was celebrating humanity's departure. They had no idea what they had lost. But they would learn. In time, they would all learn. The first sign of trouble came 6 months after the last human ship disappeared into deep space. On the planet Verith Prime, the climate control systems began to fail. These systems kept the planet's temperature stable. They managed the rain and the wind. They made sure crops could grow and cities could thrive. Without them, Verith Prime would become a frozen wasteland within a decade. Thrinari technicians rushed to fix the problem. They opened the control panels and found themselves staring at equipment they did not recognize. The original systems had been Thrinari design, yes. But over 2 centuries of human maintenance, everything had been modified, improved, rebuilt. Chief Technician Varl spent 3 weeks trying to understand the changes. He failed. "This makes no sense," he told his superiors. "The power routing has been completely redesigned. The cooling systems are connected in ways that should not work. But according to the logs, everything ran perfectly for 200 years. His superiors demanded an explanation. Varl had none to give. They searched the records and found a name, Commander Baek Sujin. She had been assigned to Verith Prime 40 years ago for what was supposed to be routine maintenance. She had stayed for 5 years. During that time, she had quietly rebuilt every major system on the planet. She had improved efficiency by 300%. She had solved problems that Thrinari engineers had struggled with for centuries. She had done all of this without asking for recognition or reward. And she had taken all of her knowledge with her when she left. The Council sent messages to humanity's new colonies. They offered generous payment for technical assistance. They promised bonuses and benefits. They said all would be forgiven if humans would simply come back and fix what they had built. Ambassador Quan. Taiwu received these messages in his office on New Bizen. He was a patient man who had spent 30 years serving a council that despised him. He read each message carefully. Then he composed a simple reply. We thank the council for their offer. However, we must respectfully decline. We are focused on building our own civilization at this time. We wish you success in resolving your difficulties. He sent the same reply to every message. Eventually, the council stopped sending them. On Station Karth 7, the artificial gravity began to fluctuate. One day, it would be too strong, pressing people against the floor. The next day, it would be too weak, sending objects floating into the air. Sometimes it would shift suddenly, throwing people off their feet. The station's original designers, the Karate, examined the gravity generators. They found the same thing the Threnari had found on Varith Prime. Everything had been modified. Everything had been improved. And no one had any idea how it worked. A young Karathi engineer named Talax discovered the truth in the maintenance logs. 150 years ago, a human engineer named Choi Yunji had been assigned to the station for routine work. She had noticed that the gravity generators had a fundamental flaw in their design. If left unfixed, they would eventually fail and kill everyone on the station. Choi Yunji had reported the flaw to her superiors. They had ignored her. Humans were workers, not engineers. What could they possibly know about Karathi technology? So Choi Yunji had fixed the problem herself. She had worked during her rest periods, using spare parts and creative solutions. She had completely rebuilt the gravitational matrix without anyone noticing. She had saved the lives of everyone on the station. She had never received any thanks. She had never asked for any. Now the fixes she had made were breaking down, and no one knew how to repair them. Telak shared his findings with the station council. They did not want to hear it. Are you saying we owe our lives to a human? The station commander demanded. I am saying we owe our lives to a human who we ignored and dismissed, Telex replied quietly. And now she is gone, and we do not know how to save ourselves. The hyperspace beacon network started failing next. These beacons guided ships through the dangerous void between stars. Without them, navigation became guesswork. Ships got lost. Some never returned. The beacons had been a joint project between a dozen council species. But humans had maintained them for the last 2 centuries. Humans had repaired them when they broke. Humans had upgraded them when they became outdated. A human woman named Minji had spent her entire career working on the beacon network. She had mapped every beacon in the galaxy. She had documented every quirk and flaw. She had developed maintenance protocols that kept the network running smoothly year after year. She had tried to share her knowledge with non-human colleagues. They had not been interested. Why would they need to learn from a human? Minji had taken all of her documentation with her when she left. It belonged to her. She had created it on her own time, using her own resources. The council had no claim to it. High Arbiter Velox called an emergency session of the council. For the first time, there was real fear in the Great Hall. How is this possible? Velox demanded. We are told that our climate systems are failing. Our stations are becoming dangerous. Our navigation network is collapsing. How can all of this be connected to the departure of one insignificant species? No one had a good answer. The Karathi representative stood up slowly. He was an old man who had worked alongside humans for most of his life. The humans were never insignificant, he said quietly. We just refused to see their value. They built things we could not build. They fixed things we could not fix. They held our civilization together while we took credit for their work. He looked around the great hall at the proud faces of 1,000 species. Now they are gone, he continued. and we are beginning to understand what we have lost. Velox dismissed the old Karathi's words as exaggeration. The council would find solutions. They would train new engineers. They would develop new technologies. They did not need humans, but as the months passed, the cracks continued to spread. And slowly, the Galactic Council began to realize that it was standing on a foundation that had already crumbled away. By the third year, the collapse had become impossible to ignore. It started with food. On 12 agricultural worlds, the irrigation systems that humans had designed began to shut down. These systems were miracles of engineering. They could turn deserts into farmland. They could make barren rocks bloom with crops. They had fed billions of people for generations. Now they were dying, and no one knew how to save them. A Threnari agricultural minister named Trellix traveled to one of the failing worlds to see the damage for himself. What he found there haunted him for the rest of his life. The fields that had once stretched green and golden to the horizon were turning brown. The rivers that humans had carefully redirected were drying up. The processing plants that turned raw crops into food were sitting silent and dark. "How long do we have?" Trellix asked the local governor. 6 months, the governor replied. "Maybe less. After that, we will have to start rationing. After a year, people will begin to starve." Trellix returned to the council with his report. He begged them to find a solution. He warned them that billions of lives were at stake. The council formed a committee. They held meetings. They argued about funding. They blamed each other for the crisis. Meanwhile, on those 12 worlds, the crops continued to die. The medical systems failed next. Humans had served as doctors and nurses throughout council space for 3 centuries. They had treated patients that other species could not help. They had developed cures for diseases that had killed millions. Dr. Han Miang had specialized in Karathi medicine. She had spent 30 years studying a condition called neural degradation, which slowly destroyed the minds of Karathi elders. She had developed a treatment that stopped the disease completely. But when she tried to publish her research, the council's medical academies rejected it. Human research was not considered valid. Human doctors were not considered real doctors. They were assistants, helpers, nothing more. So Dr. Han had simply treated her patients in silence. She had trained a few assistants. She had kept careful notes. And when humanity left, she had taken everything with her. Now the Karathi were watching their elders die, one by one, from a disease that a human doctor had already cured. A Karathi leader named Melax sent a personal message to Dr. Han. He begged her to share her research. He promised her anything she wanted. He told her that his own mother was dying from neural degradation. Dr. Han replied with kindness but firmness. "I am sorry for your mother," she wrote. "I truly am. But I offered my research to the council many times. They told me it was worthless because I was human. They told me I was not qualified to study Karathi medicine. They told me to know my place." She paused in her writing, remembering all the times she had been dismissed, ignored, humiliated. "I have found my place now," she continued. "It is here, with my people, where my work is valued. I cannot help you. But perhaps someday the council will learn to value knowledge regardless of who discovers it." Malax's mother died 3 weeks later. She was one of thousands. On the frontier, the military situation was becoming desperate. For 2 centuries, human soldiers had guarded the borders of council space. They had fought against raiders and pirates and hostile empires. They had bled and died to keep council citizens safe. General Shin Dongwook had been the greatest of these soldiers. He had commanded the defense of the contested Reach, a dangerous region where the Vexery Dominion constantly tested council defenses. He had held that line for 40 years, with half the soldiers and supplies he had been promised. The council had never thanked him. They had never even acknowledged his existence. He was just another human doing his job. When humanity withdrew, General Shin was the last to leave his post. He handed over command to a Threnari officer named Krell and wished him luck. "The Vexery will test you soon," Shin warned. "They are patient, but they have been waiting for weakness. You must be ready." Krell laughed at the old human general. "We do not need your advice," he said. "The Threnari have been warriors for 10,000 years. We know how to fight." General Shin said nothing more. He boarded his ship and left. 6 months later, the Vexery launched a probing attack against the contested reach. Krell's forces were overwhelmed within hours. The Threnari had never learned the tactics that General Shin had developed over 4 decades of combat. They did not understand the terrain. They did not know the enemy. The Vexery captured 3 council outposts before retreating to plan their next move. They had been afraid of humanity's soldiers for generations. Now they understood that those soldiers were gone. High Arbiter Velox received the news in his private chambers. His advisors told him not to worry. The attack had been small. The losses were acceptable. The Vexery would not dare launch a full invasion. Velox wanted to believe them. But late at night, when he was alone, he found himself thinking about the human admiral who had stood before the council 3 years ago. "We exist because we choose to exist," Park Do-yeon had said. Velox had laughed at those words. He was not laughing now. Across council space, the cascade continued. Systems failed. People suffered. The foundations that humans had built and maintained for 3 centuries crumbled away. And on the edge of the galaxy, humanity watched in silence. They felt no joy at the council's suffering. They felt no desire for revenge. They simply continued building their own civilization, far from the chaos they had left behind. They had asked only to be valued. They had been refused. So they had left. The consequences were not their responsibility anymore. The Vexery invasion began on a morning that seemed like any other. Their fleet appeared at the edge of council space without warning. Thousands of warships, carrying millions of soldiers. They had been building this force in secret for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment had finally come. The first world to fall was a Threnari colony called Velroth. Its defense grid had been designed by human engineers and maintained by human technicians for 100 years. Now it was operated by Threnari crews who did not fully understand how it worked. When the Vexery attacked, the defense grid failed within minutes. The targeting systems could not track the enemy ships. The shield generators overloaded and exploded. The weapon platforms fired too slowly and too inaccurately. Velroth fell in 3 hours. 20 million people either died or were captured. High Arbiter Velox received the news in the Great Hall of the Council. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. "Send reinforcements," he ordered. "Rally the fleet. We must stop them before they advance further." But the Council fleet was scattered across 1,000 systems. It would take weeks to assemble a proper response. And the automated coordination systems that should have made this easy were not working properly. Humans had designed those systems. Humans had maintained them. Now they responded slowly and unreliably. The Vexery did not wait. They advanced through council space like a fire spreading through dry grass. World after world fell to their assault. The council's defenses, weakened by 3 years of decay, could not hold them back. On the planet Karth, Malax gathered his people in the great temple of their ancestors. He was a leader now, chosen by his people to guide them through the crisis. He did not feel ready for the responsibility. "We must evacuate," he told the Council of Elders. "The Vexery will reach us within days. We cannot fight them. Where will we go?" One elder asked. "The Council cannot protect us. We have nowhere to run. Malax thought about the humans he had known throughout his life. He remembered their kindness, their patience, their willingness to help even when they received nothing in return. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should ask the humans for shelter. The elders were shocked. Asking humans for help? After everything the council had done to them? But Malax sent the message anyway. It was received by a human administrator named Lee Junhee on New Bizan. Lee Junhee read the request 3 times. Then he brought it to the colony council. They want our help, he said. The Karathi. They are asking for sanctuary. The council members looked at each other uncertainly. The Karathi had never mistreated humans directly. They had been quiet, overlooked, much like humans themselves. But they had also done nothing to help when humans were being dismissed and ignored. What do you recommend? The council leader asked. Lee Junhee thought for a long moment. The Karathi are not our enemies, he finally said. They are victims, just as we were. I say we help them. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would offer sanctuary to any Karathi who could reach their space, but they would not fight the Vexery. They would not save the council that had rejected them. High Arbiter Velox sent message after message to humanity's colonies. His tone changed as the situation grew more desperate. First he offered rewards. Then he made promises. Then he begged. We were wrong, he wrote in his final message. We did not appreciate what you gave us. We did not see your value. Please, I am asking you to forgive us. Come back. Help us. The Vexery will destroy everything if you do not. President Nohai Jin read the message in her office. She was 68 years old, a woman who had spent her youth fighting for human rights in a galaxy that did not want to grant them. She composed her reply carefully. High Arbiter Velox, I have read your message. I understand your fear, but I must be clear about something. She paused, choosing her next words with care. For 300 years, humanity served the council. We built your stations. We grew your food. We healed your sick. We fought your wars. We asked only to be treated as equals. You refused. When we left, we took nothing that was not ours. We sabotaged nothing. We left no traps. We simply stopped giving our labor to those who did not value it. The consequences you face now are not our doing. They are simply the absence of all we once provided. We did not cause your fall. We just stopped holding you up. We will not fight the Vexery on your behalf. We have no quarrel with them, and they have shown us no hostility. We will offer sanctuary to refugees who reach our borders. But we will not sacrifice our children to save those who never cared whether we lived or died. I am sorry for your suffering. I truly am. But the time for human service to the Council has ended. We wish you peace. Velox read the reply in his chambers as Vexery ships appeared in orbit above the Threnari homeworld. He had sent all his defenders to protect other systems. He had believed the homeworld was safe. He had been wrong about so many things. The bombardment began at dawn. The Great Hall of the Council, where humanity had been dismissed and mocked for generations, was one of the first targets. Velox died still waiting for human ships to appear on the horizon. They never came. Humanity had learned, after 3 centuries of thankless service, that some people cannot be saved from the consequences of their own choices. The Threnari homeworld burned. The Galactic Council, which had ruled 1,000 species for 10,000 years, ceased to exist and far away, on the edge of the galaxy. Humanity mourned for what was lost, but did not regret what they had refused to do. Some lessons can only be learned through suffering. The Council had made its choices. Now it was living with the results. 50 years had passed since the fall of the Galactic Council. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Vexery Dominion now controlled most of the former Council territory. They were harsh rulers, but not cruel ones. They had learned from the Council's mistakes. They valued competence over species. They promoted based on ability, not birth. And they had developed a deep respect for humanity. A Vexery historian named Kreth spent 3 years studying the human exodus and its consequences. She interviewed survivors from a dozen species. She examined records from abandoned council archives. She tried to understand how one small species could have held together such a vast civilization. Finally, she traveled to New Bizan to see humanity for herself. What she found amazed her. The humans had built something remarkable in their 50 years of isolation. Their cities were clean and beautiful. Their technology was advanced beyond anything the Council had ever developed. Their people seemed happy, healthy, purposeful. But what struck Kreth most was how different human society felt from everything she had known. There was no underclass. There were no species considered inferior. Everyone seemed to have value, regardless of their job or status. Elder Councilor Park Suman agreed to meet with her. He was the grandson of Admiral Park Do-hyun, the man who had delivered humanity's withdrawal notice 53 years ago. Park Suman was 75 years old now. His hair was gray, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He received Kreth in his garden, surrounded by flowers that had been brought from old Earth centuries ago. "You have come a long way to ask questions," he said kindly. "Please, ask them." Kreth had prepared many questions, but suddenly they all seemed inadequate. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did you leave instead of fighting? You could have demanded better treatment. You could have rebelled. You had the knowledge and skills to bring the Council to its knees. Why did you just walk away?" Park Suman smiled sadly. "Because we were tired," he said. "Not physically tired, but tired in our souls. For 300 years, we gave everything we had to the Council. We worked harder than anyone. We solved problems no one else could solve. We built things that seemed impossible. And in return, we were treated like servants." He gestured at the garden around them. "My grandfather used to say that you cannot force someone to value you. You can demand respect, but demanded respect is meaningless. Real value must be freely given. The Council would never give it freely, so we stopped asking. But millions died," Kreth said. "The Council fell. Entire civilizations were destroyed." "Yes," Park Suman agreed. "And we carry that weight. We think about it often. But we did not cause their destruction. We simply stopped preventing it." He looked at Kreth with gentle but firm eyes. "Imagine a person who holds up a heavy roof. They have held it for years, keeping everyone beneath it safe. But the people beneath never thank them. They never help share the burden. They tell the person that holding up the roof is their natural duty, that they should be grateful for the opportunity. One day, the person puts down the roof and walks away. The roof falls. The people beneath are crushed. Whose fault is that? The person who stopped holding an unfair burden, or the people who built their lives on that person's unpaid labor?" Kreth had no answer. Park Suman led her on a tour of New Bizan. He showed her the universities where human scientists made discoveries that would have stunned the Council. He showed her the hospitals where human doctors developed cures for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. He showed her the research stations where human engineers solved problems that the Vexery themselves could not crack. "We did not stop working when we left the Council," Park Suman explained. "We just started working for ourselves. Everything we create now benefits our people first. And because our people are valued, they create even more." At the end of the tour, they visited a memorial wall in the center of the capital city. It was simple, made of black stone that reflected the sky. Millions of names were carved into its surface. These are the humans who serve the council, Park Suman said quietly. Engineers, doctors, soldiers, farmers, teachers. They gave their lives to a civilization that never appreciated them. We remember them here so that we never forget why we left. At the base of the wall, a single inscription was carved in letters that could be read from far away. We asked only to be valued. When we weren't, we left. The silence that followed was not our doing. It was simply the absence of all we had given. Kreth stood before the wall for a long time. She thought about her own people, the Vexari. They had conquered the council through force, but they had also learned to value ability over species. They had studied humanity's example and tried to build something better. My people would like to establish formal relations with humanity, she said finally. Trade agreements, scientific exchange, perhaps even alliance, Park Suman nodded. We know. We have been considering the offer, and we will accept, he said, but on equal terms. We will not serve another master. We will work together, or not at all. Kreth extended her hand. It was a human gesture, one she had learned specifically for this meeting. Park Suman took it and shook firmly. The Vexari made many mistakes in our history, Kreth said, but we try to learn from them. We will treat humanity as equals, because that is what you deserve, and because we have seen what happens to those who do not. Park Suman smiled, the first real smile Kreth had seen from him. That is all we ever wanted, he said. Not worship, not fear, just respect. Just to be seen as people instead of tools. The sun was setting over New Bizin. The sky turned golden, then red, then purple. Stars began to appear, scattered across the darkness like diamonds. Somewhere out there, the ruins of the Galactic Council drifted through space. Empty stations, dead worlds, monuments to arrogance and blindness. And here, on the edge of the galaxy, humanity had built something new, something better, something that would last. They had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true strength is not about forcing others to value you. It is about knowing your own worth and refusing to give yourself to those who cannot see it. The council had paid the price for their blindness. Humanity had found its home, and the galaxy would never forget the day when the servants walked away, and the masters discovered they had been the weak ones all along.